Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode number 6 of my Innovations and Conversations with Stephen Anderson. Before we get to today's most super awesome, excellent guest, I want to thank Promethean and ClassFlow for sponsoring us. If you haven't heard of ClassFlow, it's a very cool product that can unify all the devices in your classroom pretty seamlessly. You can check it out at classflow.com, sign up for a free account, and see how ClassFlow can change your classroom. So today I'm talking to one of definitely one of my favorite people on the planet, Beth Still. I know I love telling a story about the first time I met Beth was when I stepped off of an airplane in the Denver airport back in 2009 to stay with her and a bunch of other folks that we all knew each other from Twitter but had never met face to face before. And so it was quite an adventure. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you're joining us today, Beth. So thank you. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little while.
Thank you for inviting me.
So these are great conversations to have, just to let people get to know you and to hear kind of what you're doing and some of your thoughts around some things. So before we jump into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I am a teacher in Nebraska. In fact, I just left the classroom. I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I was a social studies, high school social studies teacher. Before that, I was a veterinary technician. A lot of people don't know that about me. And I did that for a couple of years before I went back to college and decided to get my degree in education. And like I said, I ended up teaching social studies and was in a position to where I had a lot of technology available to me in my classroom. And just over time, I kind of took a liking to it, and I ended up at some different conferences and learned more about it, how to integrate technology. And that's really how I kind of ended up in the position where I am now. I am the Innovative Teaching and Learning Specialist for my district.
I love that. I love that title. I think that's such a cool title, Innovative Teaching and Learning Specialist. That's great. So I didn't know that you were a veterinary tech. So how did you go from working on animals to working on children and working on teachers?
Well, I was an Air Force brat. I grew up in the South. My dad was stationed all over. I lived in Mississippi and Texas and Florida. And I volunteered for the American Red Cross at a veterinary clinic on MacDill Air Force Base. And the veterinary technician I worked with, we spent a lot of time together, and I really I always wanted to go to vet school, but I'm not the best at math. I always tell Franz Davis, I was told there would be no math. I am not a math person by any means. And you have to have a really strong math and science background to go into that field. So I figured being basically an animal nurse was a good path for me. I ended up leaving Florida to move to Wyoming, and a lot of people still can't figure that one out. And it just really wasn't the job that felt like it was made for me. So after a couple years of that, I went back to school. Both my parents, my mom was a teacher. My dad was in the Air Force, but he did a lot of instructing. My mom's parents were both in education. My grandpa was a principal, and my grandma was a fourth grade teacher. So it was just kind of in my blood. It was just one of those things that, that's just kind of how I ended up there.
Now, and this is what the beauty of these conversations is that they kind of just evolve. But you just left from being a social studies teacher, but you weren't at a typical run-of-the-mill high school. Tell us about the school that you just came from.
I was in a very unique high school here in western Nebraska. It was called VALTS, which is the Valley Alternative Learning Transitioning School, and it's an alternative school. Basically, it was for a lot of people just assumed it was kind of for those bad kids that they just want to kick out of school, but that's really not what it was at all. It was we were really capable of teaching students who just didn't fit, and I shouldn't say they didn't fit. The educational system didn't fit their needs. A lot of my students had to work. They came from broken homes. A lot of my students started living on their own when they were about 16 or 17. We had a lot of single moms and dads. Probably about 50% of our population at times were parents. So our schedule was very, very flexible, just with the number of hours they were in school and the number of classes they could take. And they had to work, so that was just another component. But it's a really great environment for students to be in.
So was it because of that that opportunity that you had working in that kind of alternate environment, is that kind of what led you towards utilizing technology more and more?
I would say that's definitely true. I could see really kind of the restrictions in a typical classroom. I probably wouldn't have experimented as much as I did. I got to teach a different class every 9 weeks. So, I had a fresh opportunity to either make a difference or screw things up really bad. So I would usually only had 10 to 12 students in a classroom, and we were really one-to-one as early as probably 2005, 2006. But that just allowed me all kinds of creative abilities. It allowed me to differentiate from my students because I had students that were really advanced and students who really had a lot of catching up to do. So with technology, I was able to just differentiate and meet them where they were, basically.
Like you mentioned, this was your first year out of the classroom, being a classroom teacher. What was it like going through that transition of leaving the classroom to now working with teachers exclusively?
It was a huge learning curve. I'm still really trying to get my footing and just try to figure out what are the best ways to approach adult educators. It's difficult. It's not like teaching kids in a classroom. You don't really have that captive audience like you do in a classroom. So, I mean, there's a lot of resistance, but I really think the key is building relationships and building trust, just like in a regular classroom. And I have 150 teachers that I work with, so it isn't easy to spend a lot of time with each one of them to develop those bonds. I've worked with some teachers at one of my elementary schools probably 4 times now, and each time I work with them, I just feel like they trust me a little bit more and they're a little bit more willing to listen to my ideas, and I'm definitely willing to listen to their ideas, and it's a partnership. So that really, I would say, that was a huge shift.
Would you say that your background as a classroom teacher has really, helped in that transition? So like when you're working with those teachers, are you relying on some of the things that you did in the classroom, or what do you think?
Definitely. I know there are people in my position in other parts of the country who have never set foot in a classroom before or stepped foot in a classroom before. And that, I don't think I could be successful in this position if I didn't understand those struggles that teachers face. Because almost every training, I sit down with teachers and they say, this is just not really one more thing, but I always hear that. It's like, we just keep getting more and more piled on us, and the trainings are great, but it's just one more thing. And I can really relate to that because the same thing happened at my old school. So if I didn't have that background, I don't think I could have that true appreciation for what they really go through every day.
So what do you see as the role of the technology coach in learning? What do you see as the kind of the elevator speech for your position? What would you say?
I've got to condense a 2-page job description to like 30 seconds here. Really, my job, this is, I guess, my elevator speech for it. I think my job is to help teachers shine and just take what they're already doing and make it better by incorporating technology so they can share what they're doing, so the students can have more of an authentic audience. I mean, right now, a lot of what students do, if anybody sees it at all, it's the other students in the room. And I want teachers to be able to reach out to other teachers, so it's my job to show them how to do that and support them while they're doing that. But really just, it's a coach. It's a technology coaching position. So really just providing that support that they need. And they're all different. Like I said, I have 150 teachers, and they need 150 different things. So that's a challenge to me as well, is just to figure out how I can work with teachers to give them what they need.
So what's been the best part so far about your new role, and what's been the most challenging part of your new role so far?
It's kind of one and the same. I would say the best part was I have an English teacher that I work with, and she's a few years, probably 4 or 5 years away maybe from retirement, and she was really apprehensive. We rolled out our Chromebooks with the English Language Arts Department, and there are 7 teachers, I think, are the number of teachers that got the Chromebooks, and she was one of them, and she is always willing to try new things, but she's been a little apprehensive to kind of jump in and really start using the Chromebooks and Google Drive. And she is one of those, she likes to print things. She likes to print it so she has a hard copy. And that's always their first question is, how can we get the Chromebooks to print? I'm like, well, we're not going to set them up to print. You're going to have to do things a little bit differently. And she was, of course, apprehensive. It's a new thing. And she told me, this is like on a Monday, she said, well, I know students are turning things in through Google Drive, but I'm still going to print it. And I'm like, it's okay. Go ahead and do that if that's where you're comfortable. Well, I talked to her a couple days later, and she's like, oh, Beth, I had the most wonderful thing happen. I was grading my essays at home, and I was going to print them off, but I sat there with my Chromebook instead. And she said, I was sitting there with my husband, and we were watching TV, and I was able to start leaving comments for my students. And she's like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever been able to do, because they weren't done with their essays. They just kind of completed the first kind of rough draft. She said, I was able to go in and give them feedback and provide, just some suggestions for them, and they're going to get a better grade. They're going to learn more because they can incorporate those suggestions before they turn in their final product. And I'm like, that's exactly what you should be doing. And she's like, okay, I think I can do this now. So that was really kind of one of the best things I've seen, because it was somebody who really didn't think that she would ever kind of make it over that hump to where she really kind of understood the whole collaborative nature of Google Drive. And that's definitely my high point. My low point is, I would say, really what any classroom teacher would experience. There's always pushback, and it's hard to get that message out there that technology is the direction we're going. And really, I think the hardest thing to overcome is going to just be the culture of accepting technology and changing what we've always done. That's going to take a lot of work.
So kind of on that note, it's Connected Educators Month, or we're coming up on the end of Connected Educators Month, and so you're one of those people who has been around being connected for a long time. What kind of role has that played in what you're in your learning and what you're trying to do now, and what kind of advice would you give to other teachers who are beginning to explore, or who may not even consider that as an option?
Well, I've been connected since about 2007, 2008, and I've learned so much. And I think if I hadn't been connected, I never would have realized how much there was that I needed to learn. I take a look at the ISTE standards for teachers, and I'm blown away by all the things that teachers really are kind of expected to do now, or that those are the standards we hold ourselves to. And if I hadn't been connected to you and to all the people in our PLN, I wouldn't have learned how to do those things, because schools don't really teach that. It's not something, maybe it's something that every once in a while they might bring in a presenter to talk about digital citizenship or technology, but it's kind of a drop in, you're done, you leave, and there's no support there. So I feel like my PLN is going to be able to provide me with my kind of just-in-time learning. So if my teachers need to know how to do something and I don't know how to do it, I can turn to my PLN and say, you know what, I have teachers that need to learn this, and I always have people who are willing to step up, and I hope I can do the same for other people.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, Voxer has become kind of a thing that a lot of us have started using. So if you don't know what Voxer is, and Stephen, I know you do, but for anybody else, it's kind of a walkie-talkie type app that you put on your phone, and you're able to talk to groups of people. So I think Stephen and I are in a group, there's maybe 10 people in that. It's just kind of, we provide support to each other, and we're able to talk through issues and frustrations that you might not necessarily want to vent on Twitter, because Twitter really should be a positive, I shouldn't say happy place, because we do need to have those conversations, but it's not a place to kind of air your dirty laundry. But Voxer groups kind of provide that support and that communication that you just don't get through text. You get to hear each other's voices, and it's just another place to network besides Twitter.
Yeah, and I've found a lot of benefit in many of the Voxer groups that I've joined in, including the ones that you mentioned, and a couple other ones. They're really, a lot of people are moving in that direction, and they're not giving up on their other ways that they're connecting, but they're just using it as another way, and it can be a good entry point for people. So in the last couple minutes that we have left, I always like to wrap these conversations up with the same question, and that is, what is the best piece of advice you can give to a new teacher?
With anything or just with technology?
Anything.
Anything. I would say to don't ever think you're alone. There's people out there, whether it's on Twitter or Google Plus or wherever, who are there to support you. I think teachers by nature love to help people, so there are always people in your building. Don't ever think that you are alone. And just make sure that you branch out and you aren't afraid to try new things. I mean, you're going to fail. I mean, that's just part of life. But don't let failure hold you back, because you're never going to want to get out of your comfort zone and try anything new. You definitely don't want to be in education for 30 years and teach your first year over and over and over. You need to, hopefully every year looks different than the year before. Because things are always changing. I mean, our students change, our access to technology changes, different things around the world change, and we need to constantly update what we're doing. So that would be my advice, I think.
And that's definitely if folks go back out and they look at the other conversations, that's a definite theme with many people, is that I think a lot of us have felt at one time or another when we were teaching that we were alone, or that we were the only ones who were having to deal with the issues that we were dealing with in our classroom, and certainly you're not. And so using things like Twitter or other groups, Voxer groups, things like that to connect can really, really play a huge part in your success. Beth, this has been amazing as always. It's such a pleasure. I love every opportunity I get to just spend talking with you, because you're just a great mind, and I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me today.
Well, I feel the same way. I love talking to you, so anytime.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for checking us out, and thanks everybody for watching. Remember to check out our sponsor, ClassFlow. You can visit classflow.com to learn more, and you can also visit our YouTube channel at MyClassFlow, and you can see all the other past innovations and conversations. We have a super special guest. It's so top secret I can't even mention when or who it's going to be, because that top secret. So be on the lookout for those invites on Twitter. Oh, and speaking of which, you can follow Beth on Twitter. She's at Beth Still. And definitely check her out. She's definitely somebody you'll want to add to your PLN. I'm Stephen Anderson at Web20 Classroom. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.